Alright, this is the main question. Will Path of Exile 2 kill off Diablo 4? I've seen it a lot in the comment section, as well as just browsing and talking about this with other content creators, as I'm friends with a lot of Diablo players and other content creators, and obviously Path of Exile 2 will be a very big game. Now, will all of us content creators jump ship from Diablo 4 and hop right into Path of Exile only? I don't think that that's the case. I think that both of the games definitely can coexist, but I'm also here to show you guys that I do read your guys' comments. Everyone's saying POE 2 good, Diablo 4 bad, and I get it. We're hyped up about a new game, but is that going to actually end Diablo 4? Well, I want to start off the video by showing you guys some comments and kind of rebuttal on some of these things, and go ahead and mention some of the points that you guys brought up, which I think are very valid points. This one over here is talking about the Realm Walker and how seeing the most lame seasonal theme, even if you can call it that. Yeah, I would like for this seasonal theme to be way better than just going and following a really slow thing and then going in and then basically doing a nightmare dungeon and then not gaining any extra power. All we really get is the opals, which I think is a pretty big pain point, and I think the seasonal theme is an absolute disaster for Season 6. I want to go back to Season 2 where we had those vampiric powers. That was a cool season. Heck, Season 1 with the Malignant Hearts, even though that season was pretty broken with the Barber, it still was a lot more exciting. It was brand new. We had power for every class to AoE giant explode, right? And then this person over here actually brought up a really good point, saying that the biggest problem with this season is that Blizzard doesn't respect our time. And that's a very big issue with Diablo 4 in general that I want to go ahead and touch up upon. This is kind of like reasons why people are jumping ship from, let's say, Diablo to Path of Exile. A lot of people have been seeing the brand new gameplay that just dropped, and a lot of things with Path of Exile are looking a lot brighter, and it specifically has to do with respecting your time. If you guys have been playing a lot of Season 6 like myself, I've spent 100 plus hours, my aspects are nowhere near max, and I think that is a very big problem. When I stream for, 5+ hours and I'm looking at my character, I'm like, did I actually get any progression? Well, maybe I got like 2 or 3 Paragon points, because once you're towards the end, it takes so long to even gain 1 Paragon point. And then I'm looking at my gear and it's like, I've been running the same gear that I've been using for the past like several days. Like, I'm not getting any upgrades, and that feels bad because you're spending so much time in a game and you're not getting anything out of it. And I think that is a nail that Diablo 4 really needs to do. Whereas with Path of Exile or Last Epoch, I felt like when I was putting time into it, I was still getting different things that I could actually use, whether it be currency or other forms of items, right? Whereas with, again, Diablo 4, I feel like I'm kind of just putting time into something and I'm not getting that upgrade. And it really comes down to what we're about to talk about in a moment over here. And this person over here saying that it's garbage compared to what you saw in POE 2. Let's go for POE 2 and uninstall it and make Blizzard learn their lesson. This is one thing I just wanted to touch upon, is that we've gotten to the point where, like, we are not test dummies helping them test bugs each season, because this is what it comes down to. Every single good build in the game, for the most part, right, is a bugged build, and then it's like super fun, we're blasting, and then the next season comes around, right, Season 7, am I going to be excited to play Spiritborn in Season 7? Or, if I was playing Hodabarb and it was super OP, and they're like, oh, sorry guys, that was a bug, and then you're like, well, my Hodabarb is tickling with a wet noodle now, I don't want to play this game. And I think Diablo 4 really needs to tone down these nerfs. They need to look at the viewpoint of let a lot more than 1 skill or 2 skills to be viable for a class in each season. I don't know why they need to nerf the classes so hard. Sure, if it's a bug and if it gets fixed, don't make it to the point where the class doesn't feel powerful at all. Whereas with Path of Exile, sure, we've had some nerfs with certain things, that some of them were very big, right? If any of you guys remember Hydrosphere and how good that thing was before they nerfed it. There are certain things that do get massively nerfed in PoE as well, but I would say Diablo 4 should be a game where we can blast and we can pop screens of enemies. This is what the game is going in terms of a direction where we're just kind of copying a lot of stuff in Diablo 3 where we get these 300, 500x multipliers on stuff. This is the reality of the direction that Diablo 4 has been going, and that's the direction that I foresee in the game. I don't see them going back to a slower paced content like Diablo 1, Diablo 2, or even in a Path of Exile sense, where in the earlier stages, they're kind of slow, right? Who knows what the endgame is going to be like for PoE 2. Maybe we're going to be able to blast screens of enemies, run something like Asuna Smart can just teleport and just, again, or like lightning warp and just, again, delete screens of enemies with a crazy unique, right? But this person over here mentioned that I'm truly over the game. It's so boring. There's essentially one good class and it's actually broken, and balance is crap. So this is a pretty big thing. Again, it's talking about the same thing about nerfs, right? So like when you get a cool class, like again, going back to the Spiritborn, am I going to want to play Spiritborn next season? The answer is probably not. And then if you're telling me I hit for quadrillions, trillions of damage, and the next season I go over and I'm like, oh, I only hit for a couple million. That makes me not want to play the new season because I'm weaker. Why would I want to go into new season, farm up all the stuff, and be less powerful than I was on my other character? It's genuinely backwards, and that's going to be a hard task for them to actually compete with unless they add World Tier 5. And then, again, I see the same thing. Uninstall Diablo, going to be playing POE 2 only. And so I think some people are over-exaggerating. I know there's a lot of people that say this game is bad, and, you know, they play the same game every day. I mean, I see that all the time with League of Legends play. They say how much they hate the game, and they still play. But I think there are some valid points, and this is a really good one over here, where it says, currently Paragon 270, I've dumped close to 200,000 rawhide and masterworking from her helm to get 3 times resolve, which is the masterworking. I still have nothing to show for it. Can't stand this casino mechanic. I get you. And POE can't release soon enough. So I totally get you guys when it comes down to specifically when you are at the end game and you're trying to get those masterworkings done or the tempering to get the high roll so you can make your core skill or whatever skill they're using activate twice. That's a huge pain point. I think the end game, and it kind of goes down to the same thing, it doesn't respect your time. To go ahead and dump, you know, all day, because I've seen content creators do this where they're just farming all day for the rawhide, right? They need to get those, you know, resolve stacks. And at the end of the day, they have nothing to show for it. And I think that that's very disappointing. So perhaps they can make the tempering as well as the masterworking a little bit easier and a little bit more guaranteed. Maybe it costs more material, but you get a guaranteed chance at whatever you want to hit. Because it is pretty painful to sit there and farm for so long and be like, well, I didn't get anything. Okay, back to keep on doing the same thing. Like, it's just, again, not rewarding. I think that that is something to take into consideration. And then this has had to do with basically POE 2 and the amount of content that we're getting. It blows Diablo out of the water. And I wanted to actually go ahead and mention what are some of the newer things with POE and Diablo that actually came out in the most recent updates with some of the newer mechanics from Vessel of Hatred, as well as, of course, POE 2 and what we kind of know so far. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of comparison, but I want to start off the video by going over, to be honest, mostly negative stuff with Diablo 4, and the reason why people are saying it's going to kill it because of all of these pain points that Path of Exile may or may not have, right? And I also want to mention this. This is actually kind of important. POE 1 and 2 are going to be separate games now. The original design was POE 1 and POE 2 were just going to be campaigns, and then they would converge into the end game of Path of Exile. So you can either play whatever campaign that you wanted. But now these have been separated, and as far as I'm aware, they still will converge into the same game. They haven't mentioned, as far as I'm aware of, if the end game has actually been changed to add like POE 2 end game is like completely different. My guess is, again, as far as I'm aware of, it's going to be the same thing. Maybe there's going to be certain league mechanics that aren't in POE 2. I don't know. But basically, it's POE's 1 endgame plus more. What are those other things? We'll have to wait and see. As far as I'm aware of it, let me know, guys, if there has been some sort of blog post. But as far as I'm aware of, it's supposed to be converging into the same game as far as the endgame goes, plus more. Anyways, starting right off, we got 12 classes. That's pretty massive, right? I mean, technically, yeah, there are some classes that still exist, but there's going to be a lot of different nodes and stuff. But there's going to be 12 classes, and then there's also going to be the mention over here. And this was just mentioned in the most recent Path of Exile, which I'll go ahead and like pop up real quick. In the most recent Path of Exile little demo that they had with the guy from Sony, they said the campaign is like 50 plus hours. That is insane because Vessel of Hatred, I'd say if you kind of slow rolled it, played at average pace, I mean, it's like 10 plus hours. If you do the side quest, maybe you can squeeze 20-ish hours if you listen to everything and kind of play it slow. But 50 hours per campaign is insane. We have 100 bosses, and that to me is like, dude, that's an insane number. And then also we have weapon swapping skills, and all of your skills can actually be viable. Like, you can have multiple six links, which is like, this is something that I feel like Path of Exile does that is brand new, right? In every action RPG, it's like you get one skill, you put all damage into fireball, you get multiple fireball. Like, that's kind of how Diablo is, right? You pick your core skill and you just spam that again and again. With Path of Exile 2, this is where things shape up to be a little bit different. I'll show you guys examples of this, but basically you can have multiple six links and it's actually like good to do it. It's not like you're going to be sacrificing too much to actually do it, because you no longer need to have sockets in your item that all have to be linked. It's just like the gems basically have the sockets. And then the end game, I put maps plus question mark, but the thing is that I feel like the maps in PoE feel so much better than just slamming down the pit again and again. It feels like the random map generation is a lot stronger, and it feels a lot more like a progression in PoE versus Diablo. But as far as like Vessel of Hatred, we got one new class, the glyphs level up to 100, and there's also like an X multiplier. But at the end of the day, like, I'm curious to know how you guys feel about this. While you're leveling up the glyphs, does it really feel that much different? Sure, at level 46 on the glyph, you get the bonus, so it gives you a higher number stat, but you're also increasing the game's difficulty in the pit. So, like, even though you're getting stronger, the monsters are getting stronger, so you don't really get to feel that fantasy power, big jump up, unless you're getting, like, a very specific unique. At least that's how I feel about the game. And then they also did Paragon changes. We get some more points, but we have now a limited Paragon board, which is backwards. It should be like, now we have more Paragon points, so we can get more Paragon boards. But instead, it's like, let's limit the players. I think this is because they want Diablo 4 to be a more casual experience. And this is one thing that I think will definitely be kind of separating the players as far as what the players may actually want. And then as far as the end game, it's pretty much just the pit, or I guess you could do one-shotting the boss in Torment 4 for that chance of that mythic, right? Because you're not going to be doing the pit for the mythic, but like the end game is pretty much you're just slamming down pit again and again and again, or you can do Nightmare Dungeons or Infernal Hordes if you do need to upgrade, but essentially it's just pretty much the pit, right? That is our big like end game. That's where the hardest content is, but the hardest content doesn't yield the highest rewards. That's a huge issue with Diablo 4 as well. And with Path of Exile, well, at least in PoE 1, and as far as endgame goes, that's not the case. And if they converge and it's the same endgame content, well, hopefully we're going to be getting those Headhunters and Mage Bludgeons, or whatever that new god item is going to be in PoE 2. You have a higher chance to drop those godly items. It's not like if I do a pit 150, I'm going to be like dropping quadruple GA items, which I think we should have a higher chance to get good items to, again, value the player's time. That's a big thing. And then technically with the endgame, you could say, well, there's the new Undercity, the Realmwalker, and there was the Halloween event, which all of these, I'll be honest, majority of players, they don't care about. Unless you happen to have that like mythic one for the Undercity, or you were doing the glitch where you can like, get more greater affixes. Again, Undercity, very underwhelming because you don't have the tribute. And then we did get one new skill for each class, which I think is pretty cool. The seasonal power doesn't really exist. You get extra XP. And then the runes. The runes are actually something cool, and I think that in the future we could see some cool ideas with runes, but right now, yeah, for the Spiritborn, you're just running more HP and more barrier. Does that really change the gameplay? Not really. But hopefully later down the line, like I want to play, let's say, a druid that shoots out meteors. Now, can I do that? Yes, but it's garbage. I wanted to try to build a necromancer with getting all minions, and then I tried using the wolf rune that the druid get, which you spawn in wolves, so I could have this army of skeletons and an army of wolves. But the problem is the multipliers don't work properly, so you have all these wolves that slap people for 2 damage, and then your skeletons actually do some damage. They should have made all these sort of like things work universally, and honestly, it just probably came down to not enough testing, and it wasn't essentially received very well in terms of like being able to again play a barbarian that shoots out meteors and stuff like that. It unfortunately wasn't something that you could do. Now again, hopefully later down the line things will actually change. But I wanted to also mention that PoE 1 in general like has so many mechanics. This is from Zizaran over here. There's like so many mechanics that you can do. You can do the delve mechanic, you can do the betrayal, you can do well, Atlas missions also exist where you have like a very specific thing that you need to do on the map. You have the tower defense, you have ritual, you have metamorph, you have beyond, you have delirium. You have all these mechanics where like Diablo has had some other mechanics, right? Like we had technically the Malignant Tunnels almost like a Nightmare Dungeon. A lot of these things just kind of converge into just like Nightmare Dungeon copy paste. I really feel like they need to look at how we can actually engage in some sort of a mechanic, whether that's building our items or setting up like with Expedition where we have all these little like things to explode, and we can maybe have these modifiers give us more results, but it's going to make the maps like really hard, right? And I feel like Diablo is really lacking in that area, and if PoE 2 comes out and it's like, everything is transferring over, guys. All league mechanics are going over. Then, like, Diablo is sitting here really dry with content where they had content. And technically, we also have the Citadel. I could have mentioned that on this. Like, Diablo has a Citadel, but the Citadel is like a one-time one and done. It's not like a form of endgame where you're just going to slam it down again and again, right? But going into other things that I think are actually pretty cool, the brand new gem system in PoE 2 is going to allow you to have, you can see each one of these gems can actually be a 6 socket. So you're not really stuck with that one skill. And the cool thing with PoE 2, they mentioned like you can throw it on a firewall and then shoot through. And especially if you're doing this with like co-op, you can have all the extra skills, potentially kind of like working with each other, where again you're shooting your bow through the firewall and then you can hit things. And they have actually introduced this in Diablo 4 as well. So actually, I think the first game that actually had these really cool skills it would combine was way back in the day when it was called Lineage Eternal, but that game never came out, and a lot of games are kind of taking stuff from that. There's actually really cool ideas where they could draw on the map, where you could actually draw your skills, but hopefully some game will copy that, because that was a really cool system. But basically you're gonna have easier access to multiple 6 links, allowing you to, again, play the way that you want to with comboing skills. And I think this is something that Diablo 4 can maybe take into consideration, is multiple skills. This is something in general with action RPGs that I think could be adjusted. But because the way that it works also is, and I mentioned that the weapon system is going to be different, each skill, you don't have to swap your weapon and then cast the skill. It will automatically, you can select which skill is going to swap weapons automatically, and you can have a different passive tree based on your weapon set, you can see over here. So you can almost have 2 skill trees depending on what weapon that you have equipped. It swaps to it, so it's seamless. That is going to be pretty big, because then you can have a lot more build diversity, which I feel like Diablo 4 definitely does lack. Speaking of diversity, you can see that pretty much the Spiritborn is the #1 class by a long shot, and this is kind of bad for the game's life cycle when you have one class that is super strong. I don't think this was intentional for them to make the Spiritborn that OP in terms of how powerful it was, but when you look at when the players are grouping up, a lot of players will kick people that aren't playing Spiritborn. You can go on Reddit and look at people getting kicked out of groups because they're not playing Spiritborn, and they're basically saying, I can't play the game, I can't do content, because when I want to group up to get XP, if I'm not Spiritborn, I get kicked out of random groups and no one wants to play with me. And it's because there's a big difference being one class is way stronger than the rest of the class, right? And while they could have done something better, I don't think they should have nerfed the Spiritborn. They should have brought up all the other classes. They could have easily just got some sort of numerical number and just multiplied it and said, guys, we want all the classes to be able to at least complete the content and get all of your glyphs to 100. We're just going to buff the flat base of the stat up a little bit more. For now, we can adjust it later to balance things, but again, when you're playing a very specific build, you're not going to be able to level up your glyphs all the way, and this is a pretty big thing. And when you look at Diablo compared to Path of Exile in terms of the player base, now this is just POE.Ninja. This is obviously for POE 1. We don't have POE 2 statistics to see all the different classes. Heck, these aren't going to be the classes in POE 2, but I want to say there have been seasons also where POE didn't have the correct balance, but I wanted to go ahead and kind of rebuttal with this. And there's seasons where maybe 20-30% of people are playing Necromancer, but in this season in particular with Diablo, I felt like it was a very big change, because I always invite people to come play when I'm streaming, and I've noticed it's 90% Spiritborn for those reasons of one class being so much better. But I never felt like it was like that with PoE. Who knows? Maybe there was some season where it was 90% of one class, but I just personally don't remember that. So I think build diversity is pretty important. The next thing I want to talk about is the seasons in general. This season was terrible for Diablo. Again, you would have the opals, and again with the opals, you're just getting extra XP and a little bit of extra drops. It doesn't actually change up the game. Whereas with Settlers of Kalguur, I mean, let me give you a brief rundown of the most recent league and also compare it with the most recent Diablo league. So you have this brand new area that you can go to. You can hire these mercenaries. There's gold that you can get from just playing and killing monsters. And there is going to be gold in Path of Exile too as well. And it's going to be a form of currency. Who knows how the trade system is going to work. But basically, gold is a currency that you use to hire workers. You can hire these workers to basically be farmers for you, and they will farm your resources. And then you can send those resources off to different areas, and then you get a big reward chest that you can open up and you can pick out the items that you want. They also will kind of do maps for you, and you can actually have this thing be a currency exchanger, so you don't have to engage with trade with other players, which is a pretty big issue with Diablo 4 because there's dupes and a lot of other hacked items going on because people are kind of abusing the system. And that's one thing where Diablo 4 really needs to bump up its speed on just having some sort of in-game trade auction house in the game, not a third-party website. Diablo 4 is definitely more on the casual side of things. With PoE, it's a lot more advanced, so people are I would say willing to go to POE.trade and, or the pathofexile.com/trade. POE trade, rip that site. But basically, you could trade in both of the games, but I think Diablo is more of a casual game. It needs to be baked into the game. Heck, I would say Path of Exile 2, it'd be better to have it baked into the game, but at least there's a way to go ahead and actually trade in the game. I think that's something that would be very, very nice. But I'm also thinking about seasonal power, because like this is a mechanic on its own. They can also invade this town. Like if they can invade the town, and I believe they can kill the workers. I actually did play this league, but as far as it goes, I haven't engaged in that mechanic yet. But as far as it goes, it was a lot more content. And on top of that, like, what about the power? How does your character feel more powerful? Why would I want to make a new character? Well, look at all these runesmith enchants. I mean, this scrolls for a very long time. These are all the enchants. Now, to be fair, though, a lot of these enchants, they may be just like, okay, increase critical strike chance, but then you have some trigger something on kill. Maybe you can make some cool, interesting build. I'm sure there's some YouTuber that made some crazy build that has, like, the whole thing is based off of some of these enchants. There's actually an item, I believe, that you can throw, like, triple enchants on it. There's a lot more, like, crazier uniques in general, and it really allows that creativity. Path of Exile is definitely a game where if you put more time into it, you can do crazy things. But Diablo really kind of limits you to, you know, whatever thing has the X300 multiplier at this point, or some sort of thing, some more similar to Diablo 3. Diablo 4 is becoming more and more similar to, like, Diablo 4 and 3 are becoming more similar each day that I look at it, and Diablo 4, to me right now, in the current game state, is just a poorly optimized version of Diablo 3. Diablo 3, in my personal opinion, is still way more optimized. It's way smoother, the progression is just a lot better. I just personally prefer playing Diablo 4 because it's a newer game. But there are a lot of pain points that Diablo 4 needs to iron out, and hopefully with this feedback we can get some of these. But okay, so we already talked about like the way to get more powerful, right? We have all these different enchants, and I already mentioned that you can like get items, you have like workers that you can hire, and like it goes for a lot longer here. But in Diablo 4, the Realm Walker, you go in and then you wait for this thing forever because it's super, super duper slow. You follow it for a long time, and then you go in the portal, and it's, surprise, a nightmare dungeon, basically, right? You just kind of go in, and you kill the stuff, you get opals as the rewards, which are just basically XP timers that you will be getting. Is that fun? No. Is the thing really worth it? It's marginally. If you need the XP, sure, but after you're maxed on XP, the opals are relatively mediocre because you don't need any gear at some point in the game, right? Once your gear is good enough, you don't need the crafting materials, right? And the best way to progress in this game is actually just to get items and go to a third-party trade website and just get them. But now there's a lot more problems because people don't even want gold. People are listing stuff for PayPal money, basically, because they don't want gold in the game because of dupes and certain things are inflated, and there's a lot of problems with that. But what is a good seasonal power? And I want to go back to Season 2 in Diablo 4. This is what a proper season actually is. And I can go to any POE season, and I could say that if this was even implemented in POE, I would be like, hey, this is awesome. I like this. But if we look at like the previous seasons where we got the Elixir of Holy Bug, where it was super busted on Necromancer, then they nerfed it, and then no one played it, and it's like, okay, well, where's our seasonal power then? We get Profound Mind Cages to only affect the Helltide. It's too weak. We need a seasonal power that actually makes us actively engaged. That's one thing I think Diablo 4 is really lacking. Perhaps this season was too hard. I don't know if Blizzard was looking at the numbers and was like, okay, people aren't engaging with the vampiric powers. An action RPG has to be complex. The point of an action RPG is to build a character and make it to the way that you want it to actually play. Not necessarily like a game like Gauntlet Legends. And, you know, no hate to Gauntlet Legends. Was a cool game as a kid, but I want to be able to kind of craft my character and build certain cool things where I'm building around maybe a very specific line on a stat and an item. And I think that that's what's really going to be separating POE 1 and 2 from specifically Diablo 4. But Path of Exile is making the game a lot simpler for more casual audiences. They want the game to be more accessible. So like in this little clip over here, you were seeing basically the support gems, which kind of go in your gem, and this basically affects the skill. And for casuals, sometimes people didn't know which ones to put in. Now there's an application called Path of Building where I can bring it up and I can numerically calculate which node is going to be the best, which gem is going to be the best to give my character the most numbers in terms of power. And people may not want to engage with that, especially from a casual standpoint. I would say both of these games can definitely exist. And to kind of wrap up the video and answer the question, is Path of Exile 2 going to kill Diablo 4? I would say for some gamers, definitely. Some people don't have time to play all of these video games. As a content creator, I can play a lot of different video games and enjoy them, and at some point I may get burnt out. And for me personally, with this season of Diablo Season 6, after I finish off a couple other builds, I'm kind of over the season, and I'm just going to wait for Season 7 to come out, and I'm going to be playing Season 7. But I also want to be playing Path of Exile. When Path of Exile 1 and 2 both have their own new like leagues or seasons, I'll be playing both of them as well. But I know sometimes people don't have time for both, so I would say there are definitely going to be players that will completely let Diablo 4 die off and they're going to be playing Path of Exile. But I think a lot of people that enjoy action RPGs are looking forward to multiple games, whether it be the brand new Titan Quest or the new Dragonkin game that's coming out. There's a lot more action RPGs that will be coming out. Heck, if Wolcen 2 comes out, I will definitely be playing Wolcen 2 as well. But for the most part, I want to say that both these games can definitely still coexist, but there is definitely going to be a huge difference between the people that are willing to put in the time to build their character for Path of Exile versus Diablo definitely wants to be more of a casual game, but right now the big pain point is for the average casual experience, the endgame is relatively too repetitive and it's not easy to access because it requires greater affixes, getting specifically those tempers to actually be the correct tempers, and then the masterworking becomes a little bit too difficult. So they could look at some sort of way to kind of ease that. There is going to be a new campfire chat upcoming next week that hopefully will address some of these issues as well as announce something very big. But Diablo Season 7 really needs to kick it up a notch because, again, you're not only competing with Path of Exile 2's release for the early access, but you're also going to be competing with other things like Dragonkin and as well as Titan Quest. So there's going to be other things to compete with it, but I kind of wanted to answer the question as I've been seeing it again and again in my comments, and I figured, hey, I totally support you guys. Whatever game you guys decide to go ahead and actually play, I'm going to be playing both. And heck, I'll still be playing other games in the future as well. And again, if other action RPGs come out, we'll cover them on the channel as well. But I want to say that, is it going to kill it off completely? No. But there are definitely players that will jump ship because, I get it. Sometimes people, they only have so much time in the day to play one video game, and Path of Exile 2 is going to be a brand new game. So I don't even blame you guys for wanting to, express your opinion and say, I'm really hyped up to play. I'm hyped up to play too, but I'm not quitting or leaving Diablo. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there as well. As sometimes I'm streaming other games, people wonder, every single time there's a new POE league, I'll play POE, and the first thing that I see is hey, did you quit Diablo for this game? And the answer is no. I'm going to be playing both. I think both can coexist, but that's kind of my answer to the whole debacle over there. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. If you guys enjoyed the rant/video, and I'm curious to know, what do you guys think about this? Are you guys going to be playing both like myself, or are you going to actually leave for one game or the other? Anyways, that's going to wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell if you'd like to see more, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. If you guys want to see more POE2 videos, check out the pin. I'll be linking a couple down below. Peace out.